Party in the bathroom. Why don't?
That is exactly something the guy would do.
All right, so
Bobby started.
why don't you guys get the door for me so that the party in the bathroom doesn't get too overwhelming.
I like that she sees me. Don't try to stop it.
Right. All right. No, I will not be going near the boys' bathroom. So, all right. So just to kind of remind us, Sylvia Plath, obviously pretty tragic figure. Okay. Father died when she was about, I think, 9. And I don't know, man. I mean, obviously that's not his fault, but she, she blames him in some ways for her childhood, for, abandoning her when obviously, realistically, we know that he had no control over that, okay? And then because he's of German descent and probably also because she's growing up during the time of World War II, I mean, she blends this control of this image that she's got of him, kind of, overlooking her life. I mean, she tends to mesh that with the control of the Germans, specifically the Nazis, in World War II. So we see that actually in both of these poems, okay? What else can I remind you of? Now, when she was about your age, y'all, a little bit older, I think she was 19, she attempted suicide. I think she took pills, and she was found. I want to say she was found in her basement and taken into the hospital. They pumped her stomach, and she, of course, survived that attempt, right? So she's going to reference that as well in these. And after that attempt at suicide, she was actually put into a mental hospital where she underwent electroshock therapy. And you guys, it wasn't like a lobotomy, because those are like, point of no return. You don't want that to happen. But it wasn't good, okay? So she undergoes these treatments and was found to be better, and ultimately ended up going to school in England, where she met a fellow named Ted Hughes. He was also a writer, and they have a couple of small children. He runs around on her and leaves her during one of the coldest winters on record in England. And so she goes through this, state of anger and disappointment and, feeling betrayed. And in this state, she ends up penning all of these poems that would be published after her death, okay, in a collection called Ariel. Well, these 2 poems come from that collection, and they are very much confessional poems. And as you saw yesterday, they are raw. I mean, they are angry, and they lay it all out there. They bear it all. It's very, very personal, okay? So the first one is called Daddy, all right? And what I'm going to do is just kind of read through, talk about it, ask questions. We'll get through both these poems. Then we'll have a little bit of time to talk about the study guide, and that'll pretty much be it, okay? All right, so here we go. Daddy. You do not do anymore. Black shoe in which I have lived like a foot for 30 years, poor and white, barely daring to breathe or chew. Kind of cool, because you got the onomatopoeia there, right? Couldn't even like sneeze, right? So she is comparing her father to this solid, dark shoe, and what is she? She's the foot that's being contained in the shoe, right? So even if you don't know anything else, we get the idea that this image of her father has control over her, because she's like, barely daring to breathe or chew, right? And how old is she, or thereabouts? Yeah, she's about 30, right? Okay. Very famous line, Daddy, I have had to kill you. You died before I had time, marble heavy, and she's calling her father this, y'all. Marble heavy, bag full of God. ghastly statue with one gray toe big as a Frisco seal and a head in the freakish Atlantic, where it pours bean green over blue and the waters off of beautiful Nasset. All right, now, that's a lot to unpack, okay? But when she says, Daddy, I've had to kill you, you died before I had time. I mean, he did die, okay? But she says, I've had to kill you, and that is not literal, right? But what does that mean in terms of her frame of mind and the way she thinks? I've had to, like, kill the thoughts of you, right? I've had to, like, you know, let that go. Okay? And then there's this strange image. She talks about how large he is. In her mind, even though he's dead, and maybe because he's dead, he looms large in her mind, right? She feels kind of controlled by the memories of him, all right? So she says, you got a toe as big as a Frisco seal. And y'all, that's like an actual seal, like big toe. Frisco would be on what coast? San Francisco. West Coast, okay? So she says, you're so big, right, that you got a toe dipped in the West Coast, and where is his head? In the Atlantic. So, like, the memory or image of him is as big as this country. Okay? She says, I used to pray to recover you, Akdu. Akdu is German for O-U. And it's like O-H, comma, Y-O-U. All right, so if you didn't go try to find that and define it, and it might have been hard to because it's a different language, you know, you need to do that now. I used to pray to recover you, O-U. Now, we get into all this German imagery. In the German tongue, in the Polish town scraped flat by the roller of wars. But the name of the town is common. My Polak friend says there are a dozen or two. So she's got this reference to this little Polish town, right, that's obviously been affected by war. Okay? Remember, as a child, she's growing up through World War II. All right? So at this point, you're like, okay, so what's the deal with the town? What's that all about? And she says the name of the town is common, and her friend says there are a dozen or two that are named this, okay? So I never could tell where you put your foot, your root. I never could talk to you. So in terms of the idea of her father, what is she expressing when she says, here's the town, and I think it's the town he's probably supposed to be from. Bless you. And there's so many that she's not really sure which one is the correct one. And she says, I never could tell where you put your foot, your root. What does that mean?
She really never knew him.
Say it again, Tyron.
That she really never knew him.
Yeah, like, I don't know your background. I don't really know your full story. Okay? And then she says, oh goodness, that's a lot. Then she says, I never could talk to you. So, even though she's super young, when he dies, as an adult, she looks back on their relationship, and what does she admit about their communication? Yeah. Like, she was either scared or intimidated by him, or just didn't feel like they had that open relationship. Okay?
What happened to her mom?
Her mom was there, and supposedly was supportive, like, through the whole time. She doesn't have.
She just had daddy issues.
Yeah, serious daddy issues. Okay, we're gonna talk about more of that in a minute. All right. Yeah, supposedly mom was fine. Okay, from what I know. Now, I never could talk to you. The tongue stuck in my jaw, and this is talking about her voice. Okay, it's stuck in a barbed wire snare, and of course barbed wire brings to mind images of war also, because it's used on battlefields and such. Okay, and then we have another phrasing in German, ich, and y'all, in German that means I. Okay, so if you translated this, it would be my tongue stuck in my jaw, stuck in a barbed wire snare. I could hardly speak. So the style is like she's what? Stuttering, which illustrates how she feels, you know, being not able to communicate with him. By the way, if you've ever heard German, it's not like a beautiful language.
It sounds angry.
No, they could be talking to each other saying, "Ooh, I love you, you so pretty," and it would sound like they are cussing.
It's
I mean, it is like guttural. Okay, what you got?
I was gonna ask, was the part about the barbed wire snare, was it like her feeling trapped?
Oh yeah, I think so. Good pickup. Absolutely. That whole foot in the shoe thing, the trapping, the pain. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Okay. I could hardly speak. I thought every German was you. Again, melding her idea of that controlling father with the Germans that she heard so much about from the war, and the language obscene, which means it does have that harsh sound, right? An engine, this is kind of like the language itself, an engine chuffing me off like a Jew. So up to this point, she's compared her dad to the Germans, but now we have the comparison of herself to, of course, what? Yeah, the Jews, okay? And we all know how that turned out, right? A Jew to Dachau, Auschwitz, Belsen, the concentration camps, okay? I began to talk like a Jew. I think I may well be a Jew. And y'all, this isn't literal. This is just her feeling trapped, in danger, you know, overwhelmed, persecuted.
So she is comparing her father to a Nazi and herself as a Jew. It's
Yes.
like he's killing her in some kind of way? Or like attacking her?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Which, realistically, is completely unfair. Okay, we get that, right? But all right, so now we have scenes from Austria, which was sympathetic, of course, to Germany, right? They were allies. The snows of the Tyrol, the clear beer of Vienna are not very pure or true. Referencing the Aryans who believed that their race was pure. And she's like, that's just not so. They're not very pure or true. And she calls herself a gypsy. Now, guys, I don't know how much you know about the Holocaust, but it wasn't just the Jewish people that were persecuted. I mean, the Romanians, the gypsies, the ones that were kind of nomadic, that's what makes gypsies, you know. Say it again. Oh, absolutely. The homosexuals. Guys, if you were like handicapped physically or mentally, you were going to be persecuted as well. Like they sterilized a lot of people, okay? So she says, with my gypsy ancestress and my weird luck and my tarot pack, y'all know what those are, huh?
Yeah.
Tarot cards, okay. My tarot pack and my tarot pack, I may be a bit of a Jew. I've always been scared of you with your Luftwaffe and your gobbledygook. The gobbledygook, I think is the language. And Luftwaffe, did anybody look it up? Yeah, it's a German Air Force. Good. And Panzer was the German tanks that came through. Okay. And of course, we have a clear reference. Your neat mustache. Who was that? Hitler. Right. And your Aryan eye, bright blue. Panzerman, oh, you, which is a repetition of something she said earlier, but in German. Now, God is limitless, right? But she says you're not God. She says, not God, but a swastika. So black, no sky could squeak through, sorry. Very famous line here, every woman adores fascists. I know, isn't that something? And actually, people have borrowed that line, and that is the name of a novel, if I'm not mistaken. Every woman adores a fascist. The boot in the face, the brute heart of a brute like you. Now, there is a, yeah.
I'm sorry. I looked
No,
up
it's okay.
the word, the
Fascist, yeah.
And I looked it up, but I couldn't make it make sense.
Yeah, I know. Fascist is one of those words that's really hard to define, but a fascist is a dictator, someone who rules with an iron fist, someone who is completely controlling, okay? So probably the most famous fascist to come out of that time period would have been Mussolini in Italy. He was the leader of what was actually called the Fascist Party. And, you know, if you disagree politically, you would disappear, right? And so, honestly, Antifa is supposed to be anti-fascist. That's like the roots of the term for that group. So fascism is kind of like maybe the opposite of, you know, a democracy. Okay? Yeah. And I think the idea of every woman adores a fascist is a comment on how, at least in this moment in her mind, she recognizes that women are, you know, what? Strong men appeal to women. Okay? Do what? Yeah, maybe.
They couldn't take care of themselves anyway, so they were like, well, if I'm a man, might as well have one that can protect me.
So her father was a teacher, okay? And there is a photograph of him that's pretty famous, where he, and probably famous because of his poem, honestly, but he's standing at the blackboard in his classroom, okay? And she refers to it now. You stand at the blackboard, Daddy. In the picture I have of you, a cleft in your chin instead of your foot, but no less a devil for that. No, not any less the black man who bit my pretty red heart in two. Wow. Whew. Okay, so we've heard this before. The devil has a lot of different like images that are associated with it, right? So in The Devil and Tom Walker, for instance, when Tom Walker goes into the woods looking for his wife or, you know, the property that she took, because he doesn't really care that much about the wife, he like finds her liver and her heart tied up in that sack that's in the tree, and then he like looks around the ground and there are like pieces of hair that have been pulled out and these like what cleft hooves or whatnot, right? The split hooves that are stamped out on the ground, and that's supposed to be the devil in his like goat image, right? So she says, you have a cleft in your chin instead of your foot, but you are no less a devil who broke or bit my pretty red heart in two. Wow. Okay, so he's been compared to Hitler and the devil. All right. Now, we're talking about her history, right? I was 10 when they buried you. Actually, I think she was 9. But it's so much nicer to like, you know, round it out of the decades. I was 10 when they buried you. At 20, I tried to die and get back to you. Referring to what? Her attempt at suicide there. I thought even the bones would do. But they pulled me out of the sack, and guys, highlight this. Actually, probably both these lines. They pulled me out of the sack, and they stuck me together with glue. So she was saved. But ever since, how has she felt? Because you know what it's like to break something and then try to glue it back together. It's never quite the same. You might say it's fragmented. Ooh, that's a word we've looked at a lot lately. Okay, so she is fragmented, she is broken. And remember that, because she's going to be fragmented in the next poem too. They stuck me together with glue. Then I knew what to do. I made a model of you. A man in black, the Mein Kampf look. What's Mein Kampf? Yes, the book that Hitler wrote in prison. My Struggles. Isn't that it? Yeah. And a love of the rack and the screw. Any ideas what the rack and the screw would refer to?
Talking about her, like, electric shock therapy?
Ooh, that's an interesting guess. But first, let's unpack maybe the line ahead of it. Who is the model? She said, I found a model of you. Her husband. Dad's gone.
She going crazy.
So I found myself someone modeled after you. Now, these are some daddy issues, okay? And guess what? He had a love of the rack and the screw. Those are instruments of torture.
Oh,
Now, this is not literal, okay? But remember, she's writing this after he has cheated and abandoned her with 2 small children in the dead of winter, okay? So she is like scribbling out these poems, and it is her, I mean, God, it is her everything. She is laying it out there bare, right? So when she talks about the love of the rack and the screw, those are instruments of torture, and though she has not been physically tortured, she feels emotionally tortured, right?
Yeah.
So this guy that she trusted, she finds out is unkind, right? Okay.
That's crazy.
Yep. And if you hadn't figured that out yet, we have a reference here to what? And I said, I do. I do. Her wedding, that's right. Okay? So this is her husband. Now, I imagine her sitting, you know, in this kind of dim room in England in the middle of winter, you know, writing these poems out. And back in the old days, guys, I mean, you would have a landline. You've heard of that before. Some of y'all might even still have a landline, though not many people do. Do you? Okay. Yeah. So, I got rid of mine a long time ago, but they would be plugged in, right? You'd have a telephone cord. And so she's like, in the next line, the black telephone's off at the root. That means she has pulled the telephone out of the wall, right? So evidently someone's been trying to get through to her, possibly him, okay? That's right. And she says the voices just can't worm through. So she doesn't want to talk. She doesn't want to talk to him. She's done with him. If I've killed one man, I've killed 2. That's right. Not literally, okay? In fact, he's the one that publishes her work. He survives.
Oh.
He just died like a year ago. Yeah, he just died
Wait,
recently.
Did he get like, I don't know, royalties from publishing?
Oh, I'm sure he did.
Oh.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did.
That's a shame.
Or he might have saved them for her kids, but supposedly, you know, and who knows? I mean, obviously he cheated. We all know that part. But, I mean, she's bitter and angry here. But at the same time, he put a lot of work in getting the last of her poetry published. So, and there's a lot that's been said about that, written about that too. All right, so if I've killed one man, I've killed 2. I've had to like kill the ideas of you guys. Although we can tell she's struggling because she's writing this poem, right?
She's struggling for real. Hard.
The vampire who said he was you, this is the husband, and drank my blood for a year, 7 years if you want to know. So how long were they married? 7 years, that's right. Daddy, you can lie back now. There's a stake in your fat black heart, and the villagers never liked you. They are dancing and stamping on you. Excuse me, gosh, I just burped. That's so embarrassing. They always knew it was you. Daddy, you bastard, I'm through. Wow, I shouldn't have burped in the middle of that, because that was, you know, supposed to be very powerful. But, so she's done. Done. Okay? All right. Whew. Lady Lazarus. And we know that Lazarus comes back from the dead. So, just knowing about her life, we know that she's attempted suicide and been brought back. Okay, so she feels a connection to, you know, Lady Lazarus, right? So she says, I have done it again, 1 year in every 10 I manage it. Talking about these attempts, a sort of walking miracle. Why would she feel like a walking miracle?
Keeps trying to die.
Because she was brought back, that's right. Now, more of our references to the Nazis and what they did, of course, to these people, right? My skin bright as a Nazi lampshade, because you know that there's evidence that they made lampshades and things like that out of skin, human skin. You didn't know that?
No, we did not.
That is
Why would
disgusting.
they do that?
Why? Well,
Who would buy that?
Why would they do things that they
it wasn't
do?
something that they were trying to sell. It was like a memento. Like
Wait, wait, who's
So
skin?
they kill people.
Have y'all seen the picture of like the shoes in the books?
Yeah.
That makes me cry.
I know.
It's like a pile of shoes.
Oh,
That
yeah.
makes me.
Oh yeah.
Just another reason to hate Nazis.
Because why would you do something like that? Please don't cry.
All right. So now we have like the fragmentation again, because she's going to talk about herself in pieces. Okay. She says, my right foot a paperweight, my face a featureless fine Jew linen. Peel off the napkin, oh my enemy, do I terrify. And, you know, she has, shortchanged death on more than one occasion. And so she kind of terrifies herself, and she says, do I terrify you as well? And then again, the fragments. The nose, the eye pits, the full set of teeth, the sour breath will vanish in a day. Soon the flesh, the grave cave ate, will be at home on me. Okay, so grave cave ate is an example of assonance, which is something you're going to have to remember. And what do you hear in that? The grave cave ate. Yeah, that long A will be at home on me. And I, a smiling woman, I am only 30. I mean, she's young, y'all. And like the cat, I have 9 times to die. More assonance. But not correct. She makes a mistake here. She says, like the cat, I have 9 times to die. That's not true. We know it's not true. But it makes us wonder if that last time that she not just attempted suicide, but, you know, she died, does she think in the part of her, you know, back part of her head that she might survive this? I mean, it's hard to say. We don't know. Okay? But she's wrong. Kind of like Prufrock when he said, I have all the time in the world to make the faces that will meet the faces that I meet. Right? We just don't. Anytime someone says they have lots and lots of time, it is a setup. They are, you know, fooling themselves. This is number 3. What a trash to annihilate each decade. What does that mean? What a trash to annihilate.
What a waste of time.
Waste. What a waste. So she is self-aware. Okay, she gets that she screwed up. Okay, but she's unstable, y'all. She can't seem to help it, right? Now, she's gonna get into these scenes that remind us of like a carnival. Okay? She feels like a sideshow because she's a walking miracle, right? So let's see what she says. What a million filaments. Those are like little strings, pieces, right? What you got? I'm gonna see you before.
I know, but I've already cried 4 times.
No, we're not gonna cry. We're not gonna cry. You look cute though.
Thank you. That's a tear rolling down my face.
It's always, you know, it's always the ones that are like, I'm so ready to get out. I'm over this. I'm so ready to leave. What are the ones that on the last day or like, it is all, you say that, but you wait. Always the ones that you're like, they're gonna be running for their hills. They're so ready to get out, and then they just like boo-hooing on the last day. All right, so let's go back to it. We're almost done, y'all. She says, what a million filaments the peanut crunching crowd shoves in to see them unwrap my hand and foot. The big striptease ladies Gentlemen, these are my hands, my knees. I may be skin and bone. Nevertheless, I am the same identical woman. Okay, so this is kind of hard to figure out if you've just read this once or twice, but she's talking about like a sideshow. Okay, the peanut munching crowd would be the folks that would kind of crowd in to see a circus sideshow or a carnival sideshow. And what human beings are often on display, well, not really anymore.
Like the freak.
Yeah, she feels like a freak, okay? Because she's fragmented, she's broken. Okay, well, yeah, it is, okay?
No, like
I mean, we don't-
woman and stuff like that, or like the man.
Yeah. So she feels like on display. Okay, she feels examined. Nevertheless, I'm the same identical woman. The first time it happened, I was 10. It was an accident. So something happened where she almost died at 10. It was not a suicide attempt, okay? The second time, I meant to last it out and not come back at all. I rocked shut as a seashell. They had to call and pick the worms off me like sticky pearls. I think that's a reference to like the fact that she was found in a damp basement, okay? They didn't really like pick stuff off her, but very famous, highlighted. Dying is an art like everything else. I do it exceptionally well.
No, you don't. You come back every time.
Well, you know what? Remember, this is angry. Okay, this is angry. And she actually was really good at a lot of different things. Like she in high school, or maybe I think it was her first year at college, and this is even after like her mental breakdown and such, she won an internship to go work for, I think it was Mademoiselle magazine in New York. I mean, this woman was super talented and she was good at a lot of different things, but she says, I was especially good at dying. But she indicates it's not the dying. She says, I do it so it feels like hell. I do it so it feels real. I guess you could say I have a call. It's easy enough to do it in a cell. It's easy enough to do it and stay put. It's the theatrical comeback in broad day to the same place, the same face, the same brute, amused shout and miracle that knocks me out. She's talking about coming back.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
it sounds like she like kind of does it half for attention.
Well,
She's like, I like it when they're surprised that I
this
come back.
is
Like,
this
what?
is someone who I mean, this pain, it's maybe, I don't know, but the pain is real.
Yeah.
Well, she has so much
The
pain.
pain is
I just
real.
feel like she pulls herself and wants to come back.
You what?
She has so much pain that like when she dies and then comes back to life.
Maybe. Maybe.
Yeah.
Alright, so a miracle. That knocks me out. There is a charge, again, the whole, sideshow thing. There is a charge, a very large, whoa, I missed something, sorry. There is a charge for the eyeing of my scars. There is a charge for the hearing of my heart. It really goes. And there's a charge, a very large charge for a word or a touch or a bit of blood, some kind of token, right? Or a piece of my hair or my clothes. So err doctor, so err enemy. And this references, I think, the doctors that helped save her before, but also the doctors that were in those concentration camps who did what? To the women especially, do you know?
They like experiments. They were like,
They
let's see if we
performed
can-
experiments on the women
Oh, yeah.
especially. They did on men too, but especially they loved, this is terrible y'all, but they loved like twins.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
like, girl, what?
It was bad. It was really bad, y'all.
Ew.
So, again, kind of melding the idea of her doctors who saved her to the doctors in the concentration camps.
Sorry.
And she says, I am your opus. Now, I don't know if you looked up opus, but that's like masterpiece. So, in other words, you saved me. I'm your miracle, right? I am your opus. I am your valuable. The pure gold baby that melts to a shriek, I turn and burn. Do not think I underestimate your great concern. Now, again, Holocaust, okay? Ash. Ash, you poke and stir. Flesh bone, there is nothing there. A cake of soap, a wedding ring, a gold filling. So, what do you know about the cake of soap in terms of like the gas chambers?
They would take a shower.
Yeah.
They would tell them they were going to shower, and they would eat. For the reality of it, they would hand them the cake of soap.
But they were not taking you out.
Wait.
Is the gold fillings?
They would hand
Yeah.
you like a soap.
And they'd say, you're gonna go in and shower.
Yeah, I remember seeing it.
Yeah.
I'm digging.
Okay.
So,
And we know that the wedding bands and the gold, even the gold fillings, you know that they would extract the, just to melt it down. That's right. Air God, Air Lucifer, beware, beware. Out of the ash, I rise with my red hair and I eat men like air. Okay, now, the end, and you want to like circle, highlight, star, you want to remember that last stanza. The last stanza is a reference to something mythical. A phoenix. Because the phoenix dies in the fire but rises from the ashes. Okay? So philosophically we could say, all right, well, maybe she lives through her work that was published posthumously. Or maybe she thought that she would get away with another suicide attempt and survive. I mean, it's just, we just don't know. We just don't know. But definitely dark, a little bit crazy, we get that, but you have to at least respect the honesty and the power of her words, right? Okay, so, study guide. Your test for the final is going to be multiple choice. I'm not going to do the essay and debate on whether I want to give you an essay or not, and honestly, I just kind of decided I didn't want to grade it. So, well, here, I mean, y'all usually do really well on those too. So as painful as it is for y'all to actually like produce it, it generally is something you do well on, but we're just going to do the multiple choice, and it's going to cover really everything that's on that sheet. My advice to you is to go through and start collecting the bios on these folks. A lot of them you have hard copies for because you've been sitting in class, okay? But if you find that you can't, locate one, they are on Canvas also, so I would get in there and I would print that out. It's going to be set up like the midterm was, so the questions will look like this. You'll have a couple of hints about the person's life, and then you'll have to choose out of the 4 who the person is. So for instance, this writer used free verse mostly, but also had a very formal, somber poem that he wrote after, or I wouldn't say he, but she, just to make it, less obvious, wrote after the assassination of Lincoln. And you would have to know that that is, yes, but who's the writer?
It's not E.
Whitman. So y'all got some reviewing to do, right? Y'all got some reviewing to do. Now, the poems and the short stories, I never intended for y'all to have to go reread stuff, okay? But if you're like looking at a title and you got nothing in your noggin, then find it, okay? Look back over it, because you'll have to match up a few of those as well. There are some terms that obviously you need to know, and there will be a poem on there that you're going to have to read and then analyze, and I'll have some questions about it. And then there will be quite a few questions over Gatsby. Okay, so be ready for that as well. I don't know how many questions yet, but it's going to be substantial, somewhere between 75 and maybe even 100. You'll be timed, but y'all, I gotta time you so that I know people are being honest. So you need to be prepared so you can move through it quickly, okay? All right, yes.
The poem that we have to analyze, have you already analyzed?
No,
it?
you haven't, but it should be something you should be able to understand and then have to read and comprehend, okay? All right, so, and that's really it. I am done for the day. So if y'all can think of any questions, let me know.